Hi, Jill here. I'm going to teach you how to make boba tea today. So this is how you do it from home. This is nothing too fancy, but it's a lot of fun and it tastes good. First thing you're going to need is some hot water. I've got some hot water in the kettle. You can see it's actually still steaming. We're also going to use the pot here as well. But if you actually heat up the water in the kettle, it's actually faster and more efficient. We have other items that we need. It's really pretty simple. You really do want a large size straw. This one is like, it's one of those boba straws that's like twice as wide as a regular straw, because otherwise the little pearls are never going to make it up a regular size straw. So I actually have, when I first started getting into this, well, the very first time I did it, I actually just had a plastic straw from a boba tea that I had sort of saved and washed out, and that was fine. But then soon I bought this set that has 3 of these, and it also has a little bottle brush to help you clean the insides of it, so that's all good. We have a couple of tea bags there. This can be just regular black tea. This is how I'm making it. We're going to sweeten it with brown sugar because that's normally what you use in boba tea, although certainly you can pretty much make it with anything you want, I'm sure. Some milk. I'm just going to use whole milk. The boba pearls. You normally wouldn't want to touch this with your hands, but this is what they look like. These are tapioca pearls, so they're really almost black, except they have this like sort of powdery surface, and they're very, very hard and crunchy right now. Like I can't squeeze them with my hands much at all. Like I can barely change their shape by squeezing down on them. You definitely cannot eat them in this state. So you need to boil them, and that's what we're going to do. A nice size cup. We have a bowl with some cool water for later. That's for the pearls to cool them back down after they get boiled. And some ice, and the ice is for later, but that actually does go straight into the tea. Getting some water ready. Like I said, the water I had in the kettle was already hot. You don't need too much water for the amount of pearls we're going to use. I have the heater going, so it should get back to boiling relatively quickly. And next step, while we're kind of waiting for that to happen, is we're going to start the tea. I always find that putting the tea bags in after the water is poured is actually better. Now you want to leave a fairly large amount of space at the top of the cup. You don't want to fill it anywhere near the top, because we're going to be adding quite a bit of extra volume to this later on. And the tea bags go, and that'll seep for the usual amount of time. I like it fairly dark, so I usually wait, but you don't want to go so long that it starts to become bitter. And I do hear, yep, and see that the water is about to boil. So the next step is to get the pearls in. For the amount of tea that we're making, you want about a half a cup of pearls in the bottom of it. So that's for one good size serving. So I could, when I make boba for 2 people, I just use a whole cup. This is a half cup, and it goes. The water should already be either boiling or nearly boiling. And what you want to see is after about, if you do this right, where the water is already very, very hot, it really doesn't take too long. What will happen is the pearls will stay at the bottom, as they hopefully can see now. They're pretty much at the bottom, and then they start to bounce, and they are starting to bounce now. And then once they're like really staying up at the surface, you know that they're getting pretty good and boiled. Okay, a couple of minutes have gone by. You can see the pearls are now floating at the surface. They're also much larger. You can see they're roughly almost double their size from when they were dry. Tea is about ready as well, so we're going to take the tea bags out so that we don't oversteep them and start to turn the tea bitter. And we'll want to put in some brown sugar at this point. All right, this is a minute or so later. I'm turning the heat off. You can see basically all of the pearls are now floating. They're all nice and large as well. And what we're going to do is take them and put them in the cold water. Okay, I've drained most of the water out of it. Doesn't matter if you drain all of it, because it's about to go into more water anyway. It's going to just soak in water. This is cool water, though. You can even ice it. I've even iced it on occasion, especially if you end up with like a lot of hot water going in there too, and then the whole thing becomes a little too warm. I think the idea with this step, as I understand, is it sort of sets the pearls. They can become really gummy or something if you cook them for a very long time, which I've done once or twice. And they're not awful that way, but they're not really how they're supposed to be either. They're supposed to be sort of soft, chewy, a nice texture. You definitely do want to cook them enough. You do not want them like al dente. That's a bad mistake too. I've done that one too. But basically, if they're large and fluffy, kind of looking that way, and then you cool them down in the cold water, you're pretty much good to go. So we're gonna let that sit for just another second here. Off camera, I put in some brown sugar in the tea. It has now been sweetened. I went ahead and drained the lukewarm water out of there. The pearls are ready to be put in, except that this water is still very hot. So we're gonna put in some ice. We're gonna cool it back down. I think this is just so that the boba pearls are more or less the right consistency. Also, this is considered an iced drink usually. And because the water is quite hot, if we stir it, we should find that like the ice basically goes away and then it just sort of becomes cool. This was also stirring up the brown sugar that I put in a little bit ago. You can see the ice is almost gone now. So the tea will be nice and cool. We're going to put in some milk. And then the pearls. They do kind of slide in like all at once, sometimes like that. And there you go, one boba tea and ready to enjoy. It takes perhaps 5 to 10 minutes, something like that. Probably closer to 10 if you include like all the time for water to warm up and, you know, finding everything in the kitchen and so on. It's really enjoyable. The tea's, you know, pretty standard black tea is all I used with brown sugar and milk. And then the bobas themselves are sort of like this, you know, kind of the star of the event because they add the textural change to it. Enjoy.